Energetic alignment doesn't mean I'm only going to be in my high vibration if I'm doing the exact perfect thing, and I must be in a high vibration at all times for me to be realizing my dreams. And I think one of my main principles is like, let's not do spiritual bypassing.
Could you maybe even expand on this idea of spiritual bypassing?
What you place your attention on grows. We know that to be true. But so you don't want to focus on that necessarily all the time. But if you ignore it, if you don't honor the past, if you don't honor some of the dynamics that are in play, are you really, leaving something really important out that actually wants healing, that actually wants recognition and acknowledgement?
On this episode of Lucid Lines, we explore the often messy, authentic path to alignment, and why embracing all of our energy may be the real key to creating abundance. Lucid Lines is a podcast dedicated to cutting through meaningless noise to help you find clarity and purpose in a rapidly changing world. And I'm your host, Ifti. And today, we're diving deep into that world of energetic alignment with Charlotte. She's an embodied abundance mentor, helping creatives and visionaries tap into their own inner power. Her work is a fascinating bridge between the metaphysical and practical realities of everyday modern life. So with that being said, let's get right into the episode. Okay, let's dive in. Charlotte, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to Lucid Lines.
Thank you for having me.
So for my audience, Charlotte is an embodied abundance mentor who guides visionaries and creatives to connect with their inner power through energetic alignment and presence. Her work is a fascinating bridge between the metaphysical and the practical realities of today's modern life. So actually, I'd love to start right here, Charlotte. You know, something you talk about on your YouTube channel that I've been watching for a while now is you talk about this idea of energetic alignment. How does that idea of energetic alignment connect with this sort of idea of like skin in the game, taking actionable steps, where our real world actions and risks actually have to align with our inner state, our inner energetic state for true change to like really occur?
Well, so for me, I think of energetic alignment as sort of energy in action. So, we can do a lot of work on the yoga mat or in meditation, when we're engaged in our spiritual practices. And then all of that alignment gets sort of refracted or reflected through our life, through the way that we are interacting with people and with the environment and the world. And so I'm always really interested in where our energetic practices, where our self-inquiry, when our energy work meets real life, and how we sort of carry that through the day. And so in some ways, it could be like, can you see the divine in an email? It could be that sort of thing where actually even the mundane can take on this new quality when you start to attune to yourself in a more, I suppose, I don't know, you may be starting to connect more deeply with a spiritual dimension of life, and then you start to see it in the everyday. I was sort of thinking as well, energetic alignment doesn't mean I'm only going to be in my high vibration if I'm doing the exact perfect thing, and I must be in a high vibration at all times for me to be realizing my dreams. And I think one of my main principles is like, let's not do spiritual bypassing. And so energetic alignment is not demonizing those moments when we don't feel super high vibration, when we're not feeling like our frequency is right up there. It's more so being aware and attuned. What's going on? How can I navigate that? How is that shaping my reality? What is the consequence of my energetic state now? So it's always the way energy plays out in reality. and you know, and how we do or don't accept that, how we do or don't resist that.
I love that. And actually, I feel like that's something that's has separated, for me personally, just viewing a lot of the content and the insights that you share from this day and age where we have a lot of people coming on YouTube and creating videos. And sometimes you could see maybe it's a cultural thing of sort of neglecting the dark side, neglecting the dark parts of the journey, and just trying to. I mean, could you maybe even expand on this idea of spiritual bypassing? Because I've watched a few videos lately of some very well-known people in the sort of spiritual and metaphysical community starting to talk about this, starting to becoming a discussion and bring it to light about this idea of spiritual bypassing.
Yeah, so I think for me it's when we don't permit what has been labeled as low vibration states or emotions. It's when we don't acknowledge some of the realities and struggles and difficulties of life. So, for example, I talk a lot about abundance on my channel, and one of the things I think that can get overlooked if we're spiritually bypassing is the real injustice and inequality in the world that money is associated with, the real ways in which it has been wielded to cause harm and damage. And what you place your attention on grows. We know that to be true. But so you don't want to focus on that necessarily all the time. But if you ignore it, if you don't honor the past, if you don't honor some of the dynamics that are in play, are you really, leaving something really important out that actually wants healing, that actually wants recognition and acknowledgement? So I think for me, it's that inclusion of what might be perceived as negative, so that we're not pushing it away, so that we can open our hearts to it and really and truly face the heartbreak that comes from recognizing what might have been repressed or ignored.
This is it's powerful insight because it's something I've gone through personally on my journey lately, where I was learning more about myself. I started to learn about parts of myself that maybe I didn't like so much, and instead of acknowledging them and simply sort of understanding that this is still a part of my journey, I sort of like pushed that aside, and I was like, this part of me no longer matters. Whereas that was sort of almost pushing it away, was self-perpetuating itself and starting to show up in other areas of my life, or, in my own actions and things that I was like, I don't know, I don't understand why I don't have clarity around these things, but it's because I was maybe neglecting a whole side of myself,
Totally.
that, like you say, needed some sort of attention.
Yeah, exactly. And I know it's a spiritual cliche, but what we resist persists, right? So it kind of is true. So, I suppose that's another principle that I hold really dearly, is that the more we can sort of open and welcome in some of those parts of ourselves that feel more difficult, then ultimately the easier it is for them to pass through us and be transformed. Pushing them away, I mean, obviously there's times when it's not the moment to bring up a trauma, for example, but slowly but surely, gently, we open our hearts and accept ourselves more and more, and that's a wonderful thing.
I'm really interested in how these sort of patterns play out generationally, and I think that's something we'll get into this episode a little later. But another video that you had was on this idea of receiving, and I think what you're saying directly plays into this. Is so many of us who are maybe very empathetic people, giving people, in a general sense, we tend to give a lot of ourselves, but I think that's not the lesson for a lot of people. It's actually to learn how to receive And I thought that was one of your other powerful lessons in learning how to receive. So could you maybe expand on this idea of, to you, like what it means to, receive abundance, maybe close that loop in a sense, of giving and receiving?
Yeah, thank you, Ifti. It's so funny how synchronicities really work, because I'm actually creating a workshop about this right now because so many people struggle with this issue.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's lots of reasons why this comes up. And I think about these different ladders, right? Where you have the mind, you have the subconscious mind, you have the energy field, and you have these karmic imprints, as Edward Mannix would call them. And then we also have, our own experience, our family experience, society's experiences and conditionings. And so the inability to receive, or resistance to receiving, can come from all these different places. Even if you think about like hustle culture and the capitalist idea of productivity, where our self-worth is about how much value we can generate and produce. Value is literally tied so closely to your labor, and that gets internalized, and we don't think we're worthy unless we are productive and efficient and contributing in that one specific way that society has told us is really important. Then we're not in receiving mode. We think it's all doing, doing, doing. And, we are actually very receptive beings, just naturally, aren't we? But we've kind of maybe closed down the ability to let it in because we think that that's not fair, that that's too easy. We think we've got to work really, really hard for everything. And again, that's like productivity culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
Telling you it's, work is hard. And so that to decouple value from work and things needing to be difficult takes quite the effort, right? You have to stand back and look at, okay, like, whoa, culture has told me that this is the narrative, this is the truth, when in fact being able to be receptive is wildly important. Amazing to be able to even receive something like a compliment. That's a good way to practice, by the way, or to sort of check in with like, how receptive am I? If someone compliments you and you bat it off and you deflect and you diminish yourself in some way, then maybe that's a really good, practice. It's like, can I just start taking a compliment? But people feel guilty about receiving things because, maybe they don't feel like they deserve it. If they have it, other people won't have it. Why should I have it when other people don't have it? Maybe if I get it, people will be jealous. Maybe it will separate me from the people I love. There's lots of patterns underneath it. And one of the things I find really powerful is to, in a meditation kind of state, or if you're just doing some sitting or contemplation, to tune into your breath and see, can you just receive your breath instead of doing the breath? Something I learned from Tara Brach years ago. And it's a really subtle shift, but it's so powerful for just, it's like sitting back in the armchair of life instead of kind of leaning forward, and just being able to say it's okay for things to come to me. I'm open to receiving opportunities and love and abundance and insights and information. It's really powerful.
I'm curious to know how you think about, in relation to receiving, how you think about giving in relation to receiving. For example, if you're tipping someone or you're giving a gift, what is sort of your mindset around that? Do you just say, okay, I'm giving this without expectation of receiving anything? Because that's a very common mindset people have. I'm going to give you the gift. And then the other side of that is it becomes transactional. So people give the gift or the tip, and now they expect really good service. Or I'm gauging your service based on the tip. Or I'm going to give you this gift for Christmas, and it's $350, so your gift must be at least $250, right? And so how are you thinking about that? Because I think that's a very common part of human society. We give gifts and we tip, but are we thinking about it the right way?
Ooh, this is so juicy. I think there's at least two dimensions of this for me. One being that there's a sense of kind of giving or being of service as a kind of like natural disposition. And sometimes I think this idea of service can be really tricky and quite triggering in some ways. But there's this idea that we are here to share and be generous with our energy and generous with our creativity and give from our hearts. And that can be such a powerful way to attract abundance, right? Like, a lot of brilliant teachers around money and wealth and stuff show the power of generosity, of giving, of gratitude, and so on. And at the same time, there's this way of sort of navigating when things feel like a fair exchange of value. It's like if you get to that point where it's feeling like I'm really over giving. Generally, there's not this is out of balance, then maybe there needs to be some recalibration there. But I think giving and receiving happens on a bigger scale than like one-to-one. It can massively happen one-to-one, but it can also happen in more mysterious ways, where on the one hand, something you did 5 years ago could come back to you as like a karmic gift, and you totally forgot you did it. It wasn't like you gave the person a thing, they gave you a thing back. You're not always aware of the ripple effects, so things can kind of come around in very unexpected ways. And also it might be that you give something to someone and then they pass that on to someone, and the gift chain kind of goes around, and then somehow it comes, but it's not one-to-one. It's not I give, you give. It's just much more of a web. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, actually, a recent example comes up for me where, I'm part of this crypto community that it attracts people from all backgrounds, but they have this sort of crazy, audacious goal of we're gonna flip the stock market. It's sort of like it's sort of a meme of, if you've seen the GameStop movement or Take Over Wall Street movement, it's very similar. And one of these people in our group, his wallet got hacked and all his funds were stolen. And it's something that happens to people in crypto all the time, but it happened to somebody in our community. And it was a significant amount of money, 6 figures. But what happened, and it really amazed me, is he posted his wallet address on his X account. And people started donating money. And we don't even know all these people who are donating this money, but he was almost made whole. And I was one of the donators too. And you should have seen some of the donations, because you can see everything. A couple $1,000s, a couple $100s. And it was really incredible to see how the collective is able to support somebody who has already been giving back by creating content and spreading the word and, actually contributing in intangible ways. But it somehow all came back to him in this one misfortune moment. And so I think that was a really good recent example in my own life of witnessing that. And it's incredible. I think it's almost like maybe like an ancient ability that we, like you say, in a late capitalist, modern capitalist society, we so often get so stuck in the transactional part of things. But some things are very hard to value. And so I think that's where the gifts come in.
Totally. Oh, I love that story. That's so cool. And isn't it amazing to see moments of wealth creation that are just outside the paradigm, that really give you the hope that it can be done in a different way? Because we need different ways. We need different systems for the future. You talked about a shift in the collective consciousness. And I think that the way we relate to money and abundance is going to change. I don't know how, but I know there are new models that are going to emerge. Well, that's what I hope and suspect anyway.
Oh, I totally agree with you. I think it's already happening. And I'd be curious from your perspective, from an energetic perspective, do you feel a shift in the way people are actually thinking about what money even really is? Because I don't know to what degree if you're familiar, but we live in a society where everything is backed by this paper money that's backed by a pure belief. We believe that these $20 are worth $20 and can buy $20 worth of stuff. But as we all know, that's not true anymore. And $20 last year only buys like $10 worth of stuff this year.
Yeah.
And people are starting to feel the effects of it. I think it's eroding a sense of trust in what the current version of our money is.
Yeah.
And we've gone through many iterations of money, from seashells to copper to gold to now paper to now numbers on a screen, which are extremely easy to create. I'd be curious to know from an energetic perspective how people you think are thinking about what money even means anymore to them,
Yeah, I love that. And I've always been really intrigued by what difference does it make on a practical level to know that money is just symbolic? Because you can intellectually know that, and yet you're still in this system, operating with its rules. And so I find it quite mind-bending actually to navigate, okay, what is it really? What is it philosophically? What is it in a speculative sense? What is it energetically? And yet, how much of it do I have at my disposal? It's always up and down the ladder of the spiritual to the practical. But one person that really changed my whole way of looking at money and sensing money was Sarah McCrum. Have you come across her Love Money, Money Loves You?
I'm not familiar. I think I might have heard that before, but I'm not too familiar, no.
Yeah, well, she channeled a book through a direct conversation with the energy of money itself. And it's a really, really fascinating book, and she's a fascinating person. And when I heard that, I thought, let me try this. So I kind of created my own version of connecting with this money energy. And I actually wrote, I kind of found a way of, I imagined like a dial, I was like tuning into this, okay, like what is the frequency of money? And I kind of felt this flow, this movement of capital like through the globe, and I kind of sensed it. And all these insights and information started coming through. I'm writing them down. And I just had to lie down on the floor. I went to sleep. I was like, wow, that was so powerful. And I don't know really what that was, but I just knew that for me it was like very visceral. And this way of understanding money as an energy that I can connect to and be guided by was quite profound for me. But here's another just moment of let's not do any spiritual bypassing, right? Which is, you often hear like, well, money's just an energy. But it's not only an energy, it's something, it is. And we can project whatever we want onto it. But as we said before, we are living in a three-dimensional earthly plane where it is being maneuvered and exchanged in concrete and practical ways. And sometimes those ways are very unfair, very unequal. They are conducted by powerful people, etc., etc. So it's like you can engage with money on that energetic level, and it can be so powerful and amazing, beautiful, and very, very creative even. And also let's honour those more pragmatic, kind of concrete systems that we have to navigate as well.
That's where I think about to what degree is money even correlated to our, in a more like even a physical sense? We have the energetic side, but of course we've seen you don't necessarily have to be a good person on this planet to accumulate large amounts of money.
Yeah,
And in that sense, maybe money itself is even indifferent in terms of that it's not related to sort of a panacea or a god, nor is it a devil. It's an energy,
yeah,
and maybe just like how if you gave me electricity and told me to wire this house, it might burn down because I'm not a skilled electrician.
totally.
But if you gave this energy to a skilled electrician, he could light up a whole city with this energy. And so
Exactly.
I wonder to what degree is the money, being able to accumulate money, not only related to your mindset and energy around it, but also your own personal development, your own personal growth, and even some of the more, actionable things like the doing and the being part side of things.
Totally. Totally. And, I think of that sometimes, like, we've learned the importance in business of sales, for example, right?
Yeah,
And you can do loads of energetic alignment. You can clear your money blocks. You can, understand how money is a mirror to some of the things that you've been internalizing through your life. Wonderful. And if you want clients, you have to learn how to do sales as well.
hmm,
And maybe learning how to do sales like helps some of that stuff bubble up. In fact, it will bubble some of that
for sure.
stuff up. But like there's Ken Honda calls it money IQ and money EQ, emotional intelligence, right? And then the more practical, tangible. So I welcome it all.
I love how you say like this idea of accumulating abundance, attracting abundance is a combination of EQ and IQ because I think of our hemispheres of our brain and how we think. The two sides think very differently. The left brain is always thinking very logically, looking for making sense of things through patterns, and then the right brain is sort of just expansive. It's just out there and it's seeing the whole forest, not the individual trees. So maybe it's sort of
Yeah,
like even the way we think on a like neurological level. There's a sort of maybe rewiring of your brain, neural pathways that happen to be thinking
totally.
this way, right, over time.
I agree. Yeah, and I think it also a lot of the time it just comes through process and creativity and trying things and
Hmm.
evolving through your day-to-day explorations. And you know sometimes there's also this idea that once you're fully in alignment with your true life's purpose, then the money's going to start coming in. And again, I think there's truth to that. I think the more we can get clear on what do we really want to create, it is easier to move towards that in energetic alignment, which means not in resistance, not in depletion, not in, the overgiving or the sacrificing or the self-sabotage or whatever. But it's not the case that, oh, now I just know my purpose, I'll just sit back and like let it roll in. It's we have to now work towards that and experiment and create it and make it. And that's the joy of living, right? It's making things and trying and experimenting and learning through it all.
Yeah, it's sort of even like embracing, it sounds like even embracing the imperfect parts. Like that's sort of where the magic like that's what I've experienced is in creating is like the
100%.
things that we often think we mess up is where the best ideas are sometimes.
A lot of gold in there. Yeah.
That brings me to a question about generational wealth. So, something you talk about on your channel is how childhood experiences shape our ability to receive. How deeply do our parents' ideas and anxieties about money affect our own energetic alignment about wealth, and sort of what's the first step people can take to even break those chains?
Yeah. So there is, I would say, a lot of conditioning when we're young around money. Maybe you see parents fighting about money, or maybe a parent gets sick because they're burned out from a job, or whatever it is. You pick up a lot of things when you're young that could subconsciously shape your relationship to money. So I would say the first thing to start sort of disentangling that is very gentle, because anything to do with money, honestly, it's really deep work. It brings up a lot of shadows. And so I always think it's really important that we have a lot of grace. One of the reasons why I like working with abundance is because it's, if we kind of go steady and go gently with it, it's very healing, because it really shows you, it brings up so much stuff to be transformed. So I think that, you know, that self-inquiry, that kind of curiosity about what you might believe to be true about money, about your relationship to abundance, can be very powerful. You know, what do I believe about money? And, you know, the more you start to just very gently explore it, the more that you can start to unpack things. And, you know, then you can get into more detailed things like write a letter to money. I love that exercise. I can't remember where I first read it, but it's really nice, like a very healing way of kind of reconciling with the way that you've related to money through your life. And it's almost like you start to think of it as, you know, not to overly, you know, not to like anthropomorphize it in a ridiculous way, but, you know, you kind of, you're just framing it as if this is some energy that you've had a relationship with, and that can bring a lot of sort of forgiveness and compassion. But yeah, go steady, because it's hard.
Yeah, and I think even growing up, we think of our parents as sort of these, they really are the only people we look up to, almost a godly type of entity that frames our idea of what reality is for us before we go out into the real world of what we decide we want to make reality, you know. And so my question here is this idea of when we go out into the real world with these things, with these pre-programmed mindsets around money, how can we sort of tune into our own signal? This is sort of a question around intuition. Tune into our own signal and tune out maybe some of the noise that wasn't really the way we want to think about money, but unfortunately we're programmed to think that way from childhood, you know. How do you tune into what's really that voice? Is there an exercise, or I think you talked about self-inquiry.
Yeah, I think this might sound a bit vague, but I think if you can find a practice, whether that be meditation, whether it be connecting to nature, whether it be chanting, whether it be yoga, whatever gives you some space in your mind and some calm in your nervous system and some ability to observe your thoughts, the more able you are going to be to distinguish between fear and that more creative, intuitive side of yourself that is more available to you when you're in a calmer state. So, you know, it's really interesting, this fear versus intuition question kind of comes up a lot. And when I first heard that, I was like, why would it feel like comparable things? Because fear is an emotion and intuition is like a sense.
Yeah.
But there's this kind of overlap in the middle, isn't it? Because partly because, you know, if you follow your intuition, sometimes that's taking you to a growth edge and that's really scary.
Yeah.
But they're energetically so different, aren't they? You know, it's like that kind of contracting fear energy versus a more heart-opening energy. I was actually listening recently to Lynn Robinson and Ken Honda talking. They had this, Ken Honda did this Happy Wealth Summit. I think it was in summer, and they were talking about this exact thing. And Ken was like, oh, I just think it's whatever I'm going to do, opening my heart or closing my heart. And, you know, that's a sort of litmus test. Say, like, okay, like, is this good? Can I follow my intuition with this? You know, and she said another practice is to sort of try when you're in a meditative state or calm, contemplative, out in nature, try different options on for size and just see how they feel. Do they spark curiosity, openness, expansion, or do they give you that kind of shut down feeling? And you know, somatically sort of start to tune in to those differences.
That's interesting. It's almost like when it's coming from a fear-based, egoic sort of place, it's almost like this loop, isn't it? It's like we still keep going into this loop. Okay, I want to do this, but this is why I shouldn't. And it's sort of like a self-limiting loop that we find ourselves in. And then when it's, like you say, something that gets you excited, it feels expansive.
Yeah.
It's almost like there is fear, but it's a different flavor of it. It's a different kind of fear where it's like we know we need to just push through that. And because
Totally.
the excitement is so great, the momentum of wanting to do it is so great. So it's like there
Yeah.
might be fear both ways, but it's almost like I personally feel like what kind of fear is it? You know, maybe it's something that I need to break through. So this next set of questions is sort of talking about the more. I mean, I think we've touched on it a little bit, but this idea of manifestation, I think it's a word that gets thrown around a lot nowadays, especially in like spiritual, metaphysical communities. But what does like manifesting mean to you? Because I know you take it both a mix of energetic and practical, which I really like. And then also maybe we can talk about what are some manifesting myths, common misconceptions about people who are maybe starting to learn about this stuff that
Mm.
maybe are things to consider or to go deeper into before buying them at face value, you know.
Yeah, to me, it's very interesting. I started off talking a lot about manifestation on my channel because I was so fascinated by the potential to be able to bring things into existence without the struggle, without burnout, without, you know, that kind of hustle culture that I take a stand against. But I never really went down the path of really specific manifestation techniques so much as talking about how we can be more attuned to our kind of creative life force energy, to start to find a way to trust the universe. And by that, I mean cultivating the kind of orientation where you start to trust that things are working in your favor, even challenging things, that somehow or other there is a an impulse for you to succeed, for you to expand, for you to grow. And that, again, it doesn't mean for you to only have wonderful, positive, happy, lovely experiences, but to be able to embrace the challenges and to find more compassion for those darker moments that you talked about earlier. And so through these processes, we start to move through life in a more easeful way where opportunities just start arising, the synchronicities increase, beautiful, magical things start happening, and you start noticing them more. And then you get this kind of momentum, and you're just moving through life in a different way where you don't have to push and force and mold every single thing for you to have the success. And again, here's a myth. You just have to get the exact technique of manifestation right, and then stuff just appears. I just feel like we create life through our actions. We create life through the things that we do. And I'm not saying that there isn't a dimension of, you know, a frequency match that makes it all flow more easily. That's 100% true. But we are interacting with a three-dimensional earthly plane. And
Yeah.
that's a gift and a joy, and to be embraced. And so manifesting to me isn't kind of conjuring something out of a high vibration thought. It combines some of the things, like if I think about my kind of early days of learning about you might call it manifestation, is Joe Dispenza, right? He would talk about
Right.
having this clear thought that would go out into the universe with what you want, what you're calling into your life, and then you have this elevated emotion, and you associate that thing that you want to manifest with the elevated emotion, and the emotion is what magnetizes it back.
Mm-hmm.
Really, really powerful. So do that, 100%. Go and do that. It's
Yeah.
amazing. And send the email. Like, create the landing
Yeah.
page. You know what I mean? You got to go up and down the ladder.
Yeah, that's incredible. I think that in such a great way fuses, like, yes, the energetic part's important, but let's not get lost in complete the belief of the process, and also do the action side of it too. And also, speaking of belief in the process, do you feel like with many of these manifestation techniques out there, because I've tried many of them, and some of them resonated with me, like, meditating in silence in a state of relaxation and thinking what I want, and listening to my intuition is how I feel the best about, navigating big decisions I'm going to make, and also taking the practical data side of things and be like, all right, does this make sense in the world? It makes sense in my mind. It makes sense in my heart. Does it make sense in the world? Do you think our beliefs about the process, whatever manifestation or Joe Dispenza process we're looking at, does our beliefs about the process affect the process?
I would say yes. I mean, if you don't believe you can speak on a podcast, you can't speak on a podcast. It's what you believe is possible is really, really important. And cultivating belief is, I suppose that's also a practice, isn't it? That you, on the one hand, you have to believe it to perceive it, to receive it. It's another like spiritual trope sort of thing. But at the same time, belief also comes through practice, through process, doesn't it? That you have these, what do they call it? Like reference experiences. Try the thing. Okay, I've proved to myself I can do the thing. Now I start to believe it a bit more. I mean, when I had this huge career pivot years ago from academia to becoming a crystal healing therapist, which is like, whoa.
Yeah.
Do you want to try and pivot a bit further?
A big shift.
A massive shift. There was a process of coming to believe in the power of these minerals, which I'm never without them, to affect change on an energetic level in the body. And I needed to see that and experience that for myself. I had a sort of inkling like, okay, I wouldn't be here in this place learning this stuff if I didn't believe it had potential. But at the same time, for my consciousness to really internalize that and absorb that, I needed to see it for myself and experience it and see how it could affect other people. So, I think it's something, belief evolves, doesn't it?
I mean, you brought up crystals, and it also makes me think of our whole conversation. I mean, I have crystals around me. I have like a salt lamp. There's some sort of energetic thing. It's an intangible thing, and I think this speaks to the whole process even of abundance and embodying it. It's an intangible thing, and you probably even, not probably, you most definitely know about this stuff, I'm sure, on from many different angles around this idea of crystals, and we have different crystals that mean different things, and someone could easily dismiss that, but like when you actually are around a salt lamp, like I feel better. Like, isn't that, I mean, even from a non-technical, non-spiritual perspective, it's almost a common household item. People are like, yeah, I have a salt lamp, I have a crystal, and I feel better. But they can't put their finger on why,
Totally. Yeah. And some people want to have the more scientific evidence. And some people are more comfortable with just accepting, like, by my own experience, this thing makes me feel better. I'm going to leave it at that, accept that for what it is. And I suppose we have different levels of curiosity. Sometimes I think it can be really, really helpful to introduce some of the science to kind of just let that part of the mind that wants proof to just chill, and then you can be more receptive. So sometimes I will explain to people about the lattice structures inside crystals, which are incredibly stable. They have a very stable energy field. Our energy fields are very all over the place. So when you come into contact with crystals and you entrain to their energy, you have this opportunity to become more coherent. And then you tap into your body's own natural ability to heal. And so, you know, maybe that's helpful for someone to know before they lie down on a couch and, like, let me put crystals all over their third eye and stuff.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense, because some people want to know, and whether it be going through a crystal healing session or about attracting abundance, they want to know all the Joe Dispenza techniques and all that. That helps some people. I think for other people, they would rather just be in the intangible side of it. Like, it just feels good, so I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
And I think maybe those are the two approaches. So, and that brings me to my question about the work that you do now. So, you have been doing this for quite some time. You made this shift from academia to the work you do now. You work with all kinds of clients. I'd be curious to know, what does it mean? Like, in what way is it even more beneficial if somebody's on this path to actually begin working with someone like yourself, and maybe not only identifying where they're stuck, you know, in terms of generational blocks or the way they think about money, but also then moving forward into whatever, like, therapies and things that you might offer, or even coaching sessions and things like that you offer to help people get the real tangible results from even all the intangible work that has to be done.
Yeah, thank you. You know, one of the things that most inspired me to go on this path was a woman who coached me, must be like 6 or 7 years ago or something now. And she also very synchronistically came into my life at a point where I was very, very low, very upset, very uncertain about where I was going. And I kind of lost. I had this very powerful identity and career, and something broke as a result of, I think, misalignment and burnout and fatigue. And I was on a call, and it actually happened to be what one of my friends called a gift call. So we were with, like, powerful women, and we were coming together through this network that my friend had created. And the idea was that somebody who was going through a challenge or needed advice would be given, like, insights and gifts by this group, right? And so I was on this call, and somebody basically asked me if I was okay. And I just wasn't. And I cried so much, and I felt so vulnerable, and, like, it just hadn't happened to me before, like, in that way, but I couldn't hold it in. And this amazing woman, Lisa Barnwell, she stepped in and she said, look, I'm a coach. I'm creating this new kind of program. I'd love to offer you some sessions. And I worked with her for a couple of years, and she has been one of the most influential people in my life, because what she did with me was transformed the way that I saw myself and other people and the world. And I remember her asking me, what did I feel about myself, other people in the world? And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't have a worldview that was clearly articulated. So anyway, you know, I worked with her, And she really helped me to formulate a kind of perspective on the world that was more supportive, that was more about, it is for me, it's for my highest good, it wants me to succeed, there is a frequency of abundance out there that I can attune to, and all of those things. And because of how profound her impact on me was, that's what I want to give to other people. And I absolutely love helping people to get really clear on, what is it that is keeping you from the vision. I work with people, many of the people I work with are already pioneers, visionaries. They are on a spiritual path. They have created loads of success, but maybe it's been at the expense of a relationship or their energy, or their time. And it's how are we as a collective going to move forward in this new era where consciousness is shifting, where we need people to be healers of the new earth, together in support, in community, guiding each other. And so I help people to get clear on where they're going and what's holding them back, and how they can move forward in a way that really feels good for their own blueprint. And sometimes people come and they think that they want a big financial breakthrough, or they've got, there's a particular kind of thing they want to manifest. And then what happens is that what they want shifts, because we go deeper, and they realize there's something underneath that. And I'm not saying let's not try and elevate your abundance in the wealth sense, but also there's other things, and it's coming into this alignment, and it's such a it's just such an honor and a joy and a co-creation. That's how I see it. We're kind of making life together and evolving things in a way that feels really amazing and creative and elevated.
That's incredible. Do you find when you're working with your clients, this is just something that came up while you were saying this, that clients come to you wanting more material abundance, I want more wealth or more money, only to find that actually working with you, they maybe find many forms of abundance come into their life, and then the wealth happens to be the side effect, or they're actually at the end of the sessions thinking maybe, well, I came into this asking for more money, or I wanted more money, but actually that happened, but that's not what I care about the most now. I actually care about all the other signs of abundance that you made me realize. That's kind of what I thought about when you were saying that.
That is what happens. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, that's absolutely incredible. And so I'd like to know, in terms of people who want to work with you and or even have a sense of curiosity, maybe they're just starting on their journey. Maybe they listened to this podcast and thought, well, she hit many of my pain points, and now I feel like I have to really take an actionable step or try and do something. What are some things that you are working on or offering people these days that want to start on this path?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so if the conversation resonated, then I would say people should definitely consider booking a prosperity pivot call. So I've created this 45-minute session, and it's to do essentially a kind of prosperity audit. So looking at where that sense of abundance and prosperity is really flourishing in your life, where you feel like it's not quite aligned, and get a really clear sense of where it is that you want to get to, and then see if working together with me would help you close that gap. And so, yeah, that is a really good way to start your journey. It's free, it's very fun, and that's what I would invite people to do.
Yeah, that's an awesome sort of low barrier way to get started and get going on this journey. And then, of course, you have a YouTube channel as well.
Yes.
That I'll be sure to plug all this stuff down in the description below.
Thank you.
Charlotte, do you have, I have some lighthearted questions, actually.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, I have a couple. So my first one here is actually aliens.
Okay.
What
Okay.
is your thoughts around aliens themselves, and if they in fact are watching us, what do you think, what do you think they're thinking about looking at us in the way that many of us as a collective are thinking about abundance? Do you think they have a message or
Oh
something
my
they'd want to
goodness.
say about people collectively, the way we're thinking about money and, a lot of the work that you do?
What would the aliens say to us about money? Do you know, I just get this feeling of, I don't know if what would they say if they were watching us? I mean, I suppose maybe they'd think it was really funny. I don't know.
I think they think it's hilarious.
Yeah. Maybe they would think it's like, wow, really? All that drama? Haven't you guys figured out yet that there's a different way? Have you got, I wonder if, from that higher, wiser galactic perspective, they would sort of first laugh and then encourage us to move towards those systems that do have a more heart centered, community oriented, planet nourishing drive behind them. I mean, I think I remember Edward Mannix saying, in the future, it would be great if the only way you could make lots of money was to be of service to humanity.
Mm.
And I think we need the aliens to keep, like, download us some more of these big visions. Like, come on, can we just ask the aliens to give us the alternative monetary systems, please? That's what I would say.
They probably just think like what we're doing is like sharing with a bunch of extra steps, unnecessary steps in between.
Yeah.
My next question here is about artificial intelligence and AI.
Okie
It's
dokie.
everywhere in our modern day lives. And so, is there any way that you found creatively or interesting that you're using AI today to either help you in one way or another?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, coming from, a background in gender equality in tech, I am kind of wired to look at these things in terms of power dynamics, in terms of who benefits, in terms of who loses out, in terms of what is the trade off. When social media exploded, the the deal was so irresistible. Like, we knew we were the product. We knew we were going to be kind of like, our attention would be bought and sold and traded and so on. But you can't resist platforms that connect you to the world, that give you all the information that you would require, that do allow you to be creative, and so on and so forth. And so that was, what we gave away. It felt like the benefits kind of outweighed the downsides, and yet here we are with people really, really addicted to social media, really, really finding it difficult to connect with their body, with nature, and with other human beings because of this entrenchment in technological or techno-social systems, right? And the same thing is occurring with artificial intelligence, where, come on, the trade-off, oh my God, the promise of the efficiency and the productivity and like the support you get from ChatGPT and Claude and so on, it's irresistible. And yet, what is being sacrificed? What dimensions of human creativity and agency are we potentially eroding? Are we going to be less able to tap into our intuition if we always rely on these systems? Let
Yeah, if you
alone think about the politics of companies who deliberately create technologies that make you fall in love with them, you know, which have a profound negative psychological impact on young people, that create psychological reliance, that, you know, that there are so many sticky ways that this can take us. And don't get me wrong, I see the potential. I think there's loads of ways that AI is contributing positively to society. But I always think it's so important to hang on to human creativity, agency, and just the goodness of life. and try to remember like how wonderful it is to sit with a book or sit with a tree, you know, and balance things. So the way, for me, when I feel myself getting over reliant on something like ChatGPT, I just remember, like, you cannot use it to create things for you. You can use it as a sort of a sharpening device, maybe, or as a contemplation partner, as something reflective. But I don't want it to make things from scratch for me and me not be in a dialogue or a creative process.
You can almost tell when AI is trying to tell you about how to experience something, and you know that it will never be able to experience anything. Like, at most, it'll know all the data points of, you know, what a sunset looks like, and it'll be able to describe it to you and maybe make an incredible picture of it. But it'll never actually be able to sit in front of a sunset and, like, experience that as a human being, you know. I love the way you put that. And it's inevitable. It's part of our lives. And I find myself getting sucked into ChatGPT or Gemini late at night, asking it like all these like existential questions, and I'm like, maybe I need to just put this away and go to bed. Like,
Yeah. I think, you know, it is, and it's fascinating, and it's so, can be really, really satisfying and enriching. But like you say, if it's encroaching into time that would be really beneficial for you to spend just like with your thoughts and your body, then you know, maybe there's a sort of sense of regulating that. I introduced a practice that I call intermittent phone fasting, and I did it for I don't know, it was only 2 weeks or 3 weeks or something like that. And I just gave myself like a phone window, like you would have if you were doing intermittent fasting. You would maybe have like an 8-hour eating window and 16 hours fast or whatever. So I said to myself, right, you have to turn your phone physically off and put it physically away from you at 8 p.m. and you cannot turn it on physically until after 8 a.m. in the next morning. Ifty, when I tell you the intuitive insights started downloading, like, when I just go for a walk in the morning with nothing, I got so much clarity. I had so many ideas. I got so much pleasurable information, and I was able to integrate all the stuff rather than just keep putting information in all the time, thinking like, no, I must just try and just squeeze a bit more learning into this day. You know?
oh my God, no, I think phone fasting has to become like part of our, like how intermittent fasting has made it into like the public sphere consciousness. Like, we need to introduce phone fasting, because I think that's just you mentioning it now. I'm going to start doing it because it's so true. And people who grew up, like I grew up in the 90s, the mid to late 90s, we didn't have phones and we just did fine going for walks. It's this thing that we've all convinced ourselves, like, if I don't bring my phone, I'm going to need it. Totally. Like, it's an extension of my arm when I leave it at home. And I think that is something that maybe doesn't serve us in a day and age where it's so, like, you easily get entrenched in that.
Exactly.
You also mentioned about going outside, which was actually one of my last questions here. Is I think that's one of the best ways to kind of unwind. What are you doing outside in terms of activity? Like, what are some of your go-to activities that you really enjoy doing?
I just walk. I just walk outside, and there's if I turn left out of my house, there's a lovely woods, and if I turn right outside of my house, there's a really nice park. And so I just make sure that every day I have some time just walking. And I do try to not always listen to a thing. Sometimes I do. But I just let myself move my body and like feel that rhythm and look out and up, you know, at the vista instead of this tiny little screen that, you know, I work at home. I'm constantly just looking at Zoom. like, So I want to zoom out and go and just be and walk. And then, you know, that combined with, you know, daily yoga or I have to do physical exercise. That's my absolute non-negotiable. That's what regulates my energy and my nervous system and like calms down my mind. So those two things are absolutely essential.
That's wonderful. Charlotte, I'm deeply grateful to have you today. It was an incredible conversation. I hope you all listening to this got a lot out of it. Of course, our goal here on this podcast is to find the signal amongst a lot of the meaningless noise out there, because clarity is our ultimate superpower. Yeah, thank you again, Charlotte, and we'll see you around.
Thank you so much. That was amazing.
All right, take care.